That's right, it's a pin of me. My friend got me a pin of my face. That's so cool. I'm amazed. Anyway, friends, thank you for joining me in another video. Liron here. This time what I want to do is go over watercolor colors that work for me and color combinations that I like and colors that even mix well. This can be applied to any medium you use with color. Particularly for watercolors, I find that these ones work really well in terms of mixing, also like the physical mixing of the two. So I want to share them with you, and to not make it boring and just show you colors, I'll actually paint using them and giving you several examples of how they work together. So without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, friends, let's get started. The first thing I want to do is actually draw the buildings we will use for this drawing and painting. So what we'll do is start with drawing them. I'll do that all in time-lapse because it's not a how to draw video. So I hope you will be able to follow me along and just understand the gist of the drawings that I'm doing. So let's get started. There we have it, friends, three very simple buildings. I will share the reference image so you get to see what it's based on. And now we can actually go ahead and start coloring this. Now, before we begin, I just want to mention that these are mixes that I like from my experience. I don't know if enthusiastic color theorists will approve or disapprove, but this is from my experience. I'm no watercolor, I'm no color theory specialists. I'm just doing what works for me. So let's get started with this first building here. And for this mix, we'll use Madder Lake Deep and Viridian Green, which can be found here. This is the Madder Lake Deep, and this is the Viridian Green. These two colors are a very interesting mixture that I wanted to start with on purpose, because what happens with them is that they basically kind of cancel each other and they give this beautiful gray, as you will see now when I mix it. So I'm taking some of the green and starting to mix it. I pre-wet the colors with a spray bottle just to make them a little more, to wake them up, something I started doing recently. It's really good. So I'm taking the green and now I'm adding a bit of the Madder Lake Deep in it, and you can already see how it kind of cancels it out, okay? And what we're going to do, because the colors take time to dry out, is we will do one wash and then let it dry, and then another one. So let's first start with a relatively bright color here. So I'm almost done with the painting process of the first layer. Now I wanted to talk a bit about the colors I'm using in general in this video. So you will notice how I'm using colors that are opposing basically on the color wheel for the most part. And what I like about them is that you can sort of play with the warmth and cool and and cool of the color. And you can vary it and take it in any direction you want. So you have an interesting play of warm and cool, and also that you can sort of get any vibe or atmosphere you want with them. So now you see I began with the first layer that has more of a green tint to it. It's sort of grayish green. Sorry, just a second. That's me blowing my nose. It has a very green tint to it, and when we will soon add the roof, you will get to see how it becomes a little more well balanced, and we will use the same mixture, only we will raise the volume on the red part of the mixture, okay, on the Meadow Lake Deep. So let's give it a few seconds to dry, and I'll come back in just a moment to have the next layer of paint. Paint is dry now, we can continue and go on with the reddish mixture now. So I am going to take some of the green, mix it in here, add some of the Meadow Lake Deep, and this time what I want to make sure I do is two things. First, I want to make sure that it is more red than green. That's the first. And the second is I want to make sure that the value, meaning how dark it is not too dark, because in the reference photo you can see that it's the roof isn't, it's actually brighter than the shaded parts of the building. So we want to make sure that it's of the same value. So I'm going to test it out here and see if it looks, I think we have a good mixture here. So let's get started. And we will just paint the roof. See what happens. Now, because it's gonna dry a little lighter, I do want to make it a bit darker, just a tiny bit. I think that's better now. And you can already see how just by painting the first layer you get this interesting play of shadow and shadow and light. I feel like an old man today. You can see how you get this interesting play of shadow and light under the roof, and it's just generally on the shaded areas here. Now what's interesting is that some of these areas that are already painted with green are a little more red, so I'm gonna get that now, actually. I think it's a good time to just go like this and cover this entire upper section with red, because it's actually red. I'm just not touching the inside of the windows because I noticed they were a bit brighter, so I'm just gonna leave them bright. But you get the idea. It's not it's a really small painting, it's not going to be perfectly accurate, and just the point of this is to show you how these colors interact with each other, which I think is really interesting. We can go ahead and darken the left area of the windows. It's gonna be barely noticeable because it's lighter tone than the original layer, but we can still do that and then come back. Now this is a roof, so it's actually red, so I'm painting it with a red layer on top, and this entire thing is red also, so I'm gonna cover it up. Now what we're gonna do is let this dry when I'm done, and I'll just come back and do some final touches of places that definitely need a little more darkening, that need to be darker still. There are quite a few of them. So let's kick it into time-lapse. I'll just finish the painting, let it dry a bit, and move on to just final touches, and then we can move on to the next building. I think we are done with this one, this building. I hope you like it, and do notice how the colors I've been using are completely different from the colors in the reference photo. And this is exactly the thing with watercolors and with painting in general and with art in general, is that some things can be played around with and they don't have to be 100% the same. Definitely when it comes to colors, you can manipulate color as much as you want, and as long as you keep the basic composition right, the drawing is accurate, and you are watching over the values, making it as dark as it should be or as light as it should be, it's gonna look good. It's gonna definitely be like comprehensible. Now, we've spent a lot of time on this first building, so we're gonna do the next ones in a little faster pace. So the next one will be this, and for the mixture I am going to use the yellow ochre and Prussian blue. Yellow ochre is located right here, and the Prussian blue is this one. So we're going to mix them together and you'll see how they fare differently than this combination. So let me arrange a few stuff and we'll get to it. Okay, I got everything I need now, and we can begin painting this building now. I'm going to lay down a very light layer of yellow ochre, and I'll do that also in time-lapse, just to make sure it doesn't take too long. The thing is, I will try and vary it, so I won't just do the same darkness everywhere. I'll make the color more saturated in some places. There's a fly here. I hope he doesn't crash into my painting. So let's just lay this first layer in time lapse. Trust me, I'll vary it a bit, and then I will explain to you what I've done. So I lay down the first layer of yellow ochre. I'm kind of tempted to pour into it some of the ultramarine blue already, sorry, Prussian blue already, to sort of make it interesting, but I resisted that urge, even though it's a bit wet, so I can still, let's not resist the urge. I'm just gonna put in a tiny bit of ultramarine blue into this layer. Make it diluted, okay, so that you're not bored looking at a blank page. And even more than diluted, I'm actually mixing it with some of the leftover yellow ochre that I had in my palette. I'm just gonna dab it in. Now we're getting to a dangerous point when the color is starting to dry a bit, so I can't take this too far. So let's just place a few of those and let it dry for a few moments, and once it's completely dry I'll be back and start adding the details, and you will see how it works really well with the Prussian blue. And I actually accidentally added now ultramarine blue, kind of idiotic of me, but we're gonna forget it ever happened, and next I will add the correct color. This is why it doesn't fare well together. Okay, the paint is dry now, and we can start adding in the Prussian blue, unlike that ultramarine blue I added a second ago. So this is our Prussian blue. Hopefully you can see it well, and it's very different, looks very different than the ultramarine. I really like this blue actually. Now what I'm doing is I'm taking out some of it, and it's not that strong of a blue in my experience. So I do need to take some of it, a bit more than usual, a bit more than other colors. Now I'm taking a bit of the yellow ochre and I'm mixing it in just to cancel it out a bit. And there are a few places here that need to be darkened. So I will just use this to darken them and keep it as simple as possible, okay? And those areas are right under the roof. Let's zoom in a bit. Okay. Those areas are just under the roof here. Now the light source is from the right, so on this side we have a slightly larger shadow. It's also due to the shape of the roof actually, but it's not that critical. So as you can see, a very interesting, I think, color combination. Now that I look at it, it's not the prettiest. There are better ones, I think, but I kind of like it. And I think just for fun, I will add here I'll mix the Prussian blue with some green and just create a little bit of a grassy field under it. Mixing now a bit of sap green and some yellow and darkening it with the Prussian blue. Let's see how it works just for fun. So you can see how, and let me zoom out a bit, you can see how this is very different than the previous one, and this is why these are such two good examples. You see here you get a bit of a more realistic, dull, kind of boring feel to it, while here it's more colorful and even a bit weird. I like these opposing examples. Now we can move on to the third one. For the third one, I'll actually be using my all-time favorite, which is the ultramarine blue and burnt sienna. So let's get to it. We'll make it a real quick one. I don't really like the drawing, but let's get to it and we see what we can make out of it. So this may surprise you when compared to the reference, but I decided to not stick to it directly. So first I wanted to apply a very neutral combination for the entire building. Even though it has some very bright parts, this will be our new white. So this is like the brightest this painting will get. The mixture is indeed quite neutral because I used 50% of the ultramarine blue and 50% of burnt sienna. Sorry about that, my nose. So yeah, it's a very neutral mixture. We will soon add some very dark, strong colors to it, and you'll see how this works in action. So let's just give it a few seconds to dry and continue. So while the paint was drying, I thought it would be nice to add the actual colors composing each painting, because it's really interesting to think that from these colors this thing was created, and from this one this. I think it's cool to see. So now the next step I want to take with this one is to actually add the darker spots, which are just under the roof and to the right here, and also this entire wall. And we will do that with a color that's more dominantly blue, because we will later add some highlights with the redder burnt sienna. Okay, so I'm not sure how blue it's gonna be. Maybe we will find a nice middle ground. We'll see. So I'm bluing it up now. And the contrast between the light and dark here is very strong, so I'll need to make sure I get it right, especially because we already laid down a layer of like a gray mix between the two, because it's already not contrasting with white, but rather with a darker color. So it turned a bit too blue on me. I'm negating it with some burnt sienna, and let's get to it. I'll do it in time-lapse, and we'll explain what I've done. So I kind of jumped ahead and added some details in red. Now the final step for this will be, we now have sort of the brighter areas, then we have the slightly darker ones, and the final stage will be to add the extra dark areas as well as some of the details, mainly in red here. A lot of the details here are in red. I just want to just go over this, I think, make it a little bit darker like that. Now I'm gonna give this a few seconds to dry, and then we can go back, and what I'll do is add the red color on the roof here and the extra dark parts here in the windows, and also like a little bit of the details of the darker area here and there and there. So let's give it a few seconds to dry and come back and finish this up. Alright friends, we are done with all the three paintings. I just wanted to mention, just real quick, this color combination is the one I use the most, and sometimes this one and this one more rarely. So it's not like, on second thought, it's not like it's my favorite combinations, but this one definitely is, but not all of them. It's just interesting combinations that I noticed and wanted to share. My favorite ones, just to conclude, are actually the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, and also the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber, which I currently ran out of, but this is like one of the best ones I like, and sap green, which I also ran out of, need to get a new one, and burnt sienna. These two, those are my top combinations that I like. These are interesting. And some of them I use more often than others. That's it, let's conclude. Friends, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it and you got some new perspective over colors you may want to try out together. I'm a bit under the weather, as you can see, a bit sneezing. I hope I'll feel better soon. And it's actually now time for my breakfast, which I haven't ate anything, just woke up and recorded this video for you. So again, I really appreciate the support. Do follow me on Snapchat if you're over there, because I share all sorts of cool stuff behind the scenes over there all the time. So you want to check that out. And I will see you soon in another video. Until then, take care, have an amazing day. We'll talk.